The quick, generic answer to how much money you need to start in investing in property is anything from £31,000 to £93,000, depending on the value of the property investment, as this table shows. And that is a very logical, reasonable, generic, one-dimensional answer you'll probably get from an accountant or a financial advisor. But the longer, more accurate answer for those more entrepreneurial amongst you is actually as little as nothing if you have time to invest, or obviously as much money as you want to invest in property to begin with. In this video, I'm going to share 3 strategies I've learned that have been the only way I've managed to get started to build my property businesses and property portfolio from nothing to, not to brag or flex, but a pretty reasonable size, and how in reality the amount of money you need to start investing in property very much depends on the strategies you use to get started. Now, everyone knows property is a great investment, but the thing that holds most of us back is money. It feels like from the outside looking in that you need loads of money to invest in property. We imagine property investors driving past us around your local area in Land Rovers with hundreds of grand ready to deploy on the next great property investment. What we don't notice is all the stories of how those investors got to that stage, how they got started. Yes, some of them may have started with money already from family or friends, but you'll be surprised how many started like me with nothing. And they would have done it using some or all of these 3 strategies. The truth is that in some cases, you do need a lot of money to get started in property investment. But in a lot of cases, you don't. Let's start with the generic way to build a property portfolio. Now, if you're thinking, what's the point in me taking you through that? The reason it's important is you need to have a baseline of how it works generically, to then understand how the strategies I'll get into after help you to do the same with little or no money. The generic way you've probably been taught to build a property portfolio, probably what your accountant or financial advisor would say, is you take that £31,000 to £93,000 we mentioned at the beginning that you don't have, like this table breaks down for you. You walk into your local agent and you ask them to show you the best investment properties they have on offer, the best that they recommend. You view a few of them, you put some offers in, and you land yourself a lovely 2-bed apartment for 200 grand. You put down the 61,000 to buy it, and you have the estate agent that sold it to you take over to manage the letting of it for a fee of 10% of the rent. You'll probably have a 150,000 interest-only mortgage, which is probably costing you 5.3% at the moment. So it's costing you £663 per month, but the letting agent is renting it for you for £1,000 a month, a solid 6% yield. The letting agent gives you £900, keeping 10% for themselves as a fee, and you've made a very reasonable £237 profit a month, or £2,844 profit a year. Your initial £61,000 invested is now producing you £2,844 of profit, a very reasonable 4.7% return per year. Now, you're probably thinking 4.7% return is pretty rubbish, but for most generic investors, you're not just investing in the property for that 4.7% return a year. You've done it on the basis that property will keep going up in value as the years go on. So the standard saying is property doubles in value every 10 years. So 10 years later, that property giving you a lovely 4.7% return is all of a sudden not worth 200,000, but worth 400,000. On top of that 4.7% return, you've actually made an additional £200,000 of equity. Your initial 61,000 has not just given you that 4.7% a year from the rent, but it has created an extra £200,000 of value over 10 years. So what you then do is you get a further 75% interest-only mortgage on that extra £200,000 of value you've made, releasing £150,000 to invest, and you repeat the whole process over again. And that is generically how property investors compound their wealth over time. So literally, as we film this, I'm remortgaging 4 of my property investments where their fixed 5-year mortgage is about to expire. I'm getting another 5-year fixed interest-only mortgage, and because those properties have gone up in value, it is releasing an additional £280,000 of tax-free debt that I'm then going to use to continue investing in more property. Now, that all sounds great, But how do we get our foot on the ladder with those first property investments to begin with? How did I do it with little to no money? How do we bypass that initial 31 to 91,000 pounds you need to get started? Like I said at the beginning, there are 3 key strategies to do this. 2 of them are strategies that help you make the money to generate the deposits to then invest. And one of them helps you make money, but also helps you bypass the need for a deposit altogether to begin with. Strategy 1 of 3 is deal sourcing. Deal sourcing is how I got started. And over the last 2 years, I've generated over £1.3 million a year of business doing it. And to prove it, here's a screenshot of that. With deal sourcing, you use your time to research areas, view properties, and negotiate the best property purchases possible that you then connect to an investor to purchase that is cash rich but time poor. Per deal, I make a minimum of 3,500 with a record of just under 30,000 for a single deal. The average sits at about 5.5 grand per deal plus VAT that I source. With deal sourcing, it's about creating a win-win for everyone. You find a seller, a reliable investor that can buy quickly. The seller's happy because they're getting a quick sale at a price they're happy with. And the investor is happy because they're picking up a great purchase price without any of the hassle of having to find that property themselves to begin with. It was from doing this that enabled me to build up the deposit money to buy my property investments. And the thing is, anyone can do this. I'm currently in the process of building out a franchise to teach others to do the exact same thing I do. If that's something of interest, comment franchise below and I'll get in touch. Strategy 2 of 3 is rent to rent. It is possible to get all the monthly positive cash flow of a property investment as if you own it without actually owning it. And that is through rent to rent. As it sounds, you rent a property from a landlord and then you sublet it to someone else. Now, you can't do this with any rental property. There's no point renting a property for £1,000 that you can then only sublet for £1,000. That's obviously a waste of time. The rent to rent deals that do best are usually either one, renting a property and subletting it as short stay accommodation. So think the properties you see advertised on Airbnb and booking.com. A lot of these will be properties that are actually being sublet by people using this rent to rent strategy. So you rent a property by the month, and by renting it out by the night, you can charge more and therefore make a profit. It's pretty straightforward. However, with this, you're getting all the value of making profit month by month in the same way an investor owning the property would, but you don't get any of the benefit of the property going up in value as if you own it. And if you cast your mind back to the generic property investing strategy I shared at the beginning, a massive benefit to property is that it can as much as double in value every 10 years. So how can you get a slice of that without needing a deposit? That leads us to strategy 3 of 3, lease options. These work exactly like rent to rent, but the difference with a lease option is, as well as getting control of the property like you would renting it, you agree the legal rights up front to buy the property at a pre-agreed price in the future. So for example, the property may be worth £200,000 right now, and the landlord is renting it for £1,000 per month. You'd propose to lease that property for 5 or 10 years at a pre-agreed price, however long you want, with the right to purchase the property if you choose at £220,000, 10% above the current market price, which seems odd. If the landlord accepts, you get the value of renting the property in the way you wanted, but get the added benefit of being able to buy the property at that £220,000. If at any stage you choose, so if the property price has doubled in value 10 years later to 400,000, you all of a sudden get the legal right to purchase the property at £220,000, even though it's worth £400,000. If prices go down or you don't want to buy, you don't have to. A lease option gives you the option to purchase. It's always a choice. These 3 strategies have transformed people's lives, including mine. People that started with nothing 1 year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and now a big portion of those investors you see today driving around in their Land Rovers with secure passive income and generational wealth. If I can do it, you can do it. You just have to take action. If you valued this knowledge, I'd appreciate you liking and subscribing, and I'll see you in the next video.